why don't we talk about who would make a good basketball coach? I know you and I were texting before the show. I actually put out an article this morning about 5 coaches that I believe Michigan basketball should pursue. And so we might have some overlap here. You and I both prepared 5 coaches that we think Michigan should pursue. I'm going to let you go first, Matt. We'll go back and forth though, and just talk about some names. We can just spitball some names. I got a couple extra names that I'll bring up at the end, just that are kind of interesting, and we can talk about, are they, ideal candidates but not very realistic? Are they up and coming coaches that would be awesome? Are they proven veterans that we might not have a shot at landing, but we should go make them say no anyway? So let's have that conversation. So who's your first coach you believe Michigan should pursue?
Yeah, it's funny, Mike, because, as I'm looking through my list here, like most of these guys have some type of tie to a Florida school, which, I'm from Florida. But
Yeah.
these are a lot of the guys that have been catching my attention that have been mentioned within, the media and the coaching search speculation so far. The guy at the top of my list, and I think that this guy might be at the top of yours as well, is Dusty May out of Florida Atlantic. He's probably one of the most intriguing candidates for me thus far. Let's see. In the 22-23 season, the Owls went from the number 8 seed to the Final Four that year.
Yeah.
And, they've showed no signs of slowing down since then. I think that this guy is a winner that can do a lot with the Michigan basketball program. If you look at what he's done so far with Florida Atlantic, really impressed with him as a candidate.
Yeah, Dusty May was 5th on my list, actually, but I don't really know if I ranked him. I just kind of have 5 guys that he kind of came up 5th. So he was one of my 5 guys. You mentioned they were
this
America's.
Is in no particular order for me as well. I don't know if I'd name him the top for me either.
He's definitely one of the fan favorites, right? Last year, that Final Four run, they were America's sweetheart, the Cinderella story. They went 35-4. This year, 24-7, still pretty damn good. There may not be a hotter new name in coaching than Dusty May, so I think Michigan fans should definitely keep an eye out on him. I'm going to go ahead and get the elephant in the room out of the way. John Beilein is one of my 5. If you're Michigan and you're not talking to John Beilein, then you're crazy. The fact that Ward Manuel is the one doing this coaching search does not instill confidence in me, but I'm hopeful that he's talking to John Beilein. I believe Beilein still has a teaching position with Michigan right now, at least as of last year he did. So Beilein is in the Ann Arbor area. He's doing stuff. If anybody that's been living under a rock that's listening to this podcast that doesn't know who that is, I'm assuming everybody does because it's a Michigan podcast. John Beilein is former Michigan coach, took Michigan to 2 national championships. That's right, 2 national championships. He lost them both, but took them to 2 natties. He's taken 4 different teams to the NCAA tournament. So this guy knows how to coach. The one question mark with John Beilein is his age. The first thing I did when Juwan Howard got fired was Googled John Beilein's age. He's 71 years old, so the question becomes, how quickly can he rebuild a program? Because Beilein is not a John Calipari kind of go get 5 stars kind of guy. At least he wasn't. So at 71 years of age, we get maybe 3 or 4 good years out of Beilein. I don't think it's realistic to expect much more than that. Can he rebuild the program with his style in today's NIL era? That would be the question.
And another noteworthy component of this whole conversation, Mike, is the status in which Juwan Howard leaves this Michigan basketball program, right? Because it's no longer a conversation of just taking on a job at the University of Michigan as their head basketball coach. This is also a rebuild that, whoever takes this position is taking on. Michigan, not the most well-reputed school when it comes to NIL, so you have that working against the grain for you. Also, as you've already touched on and alluded to, Michigan stands to lose God knows how many guys to the transfer portal. There's recruits that are committed that might not stick that out with the Wolverines. Whoever takes this job has a lot going against them. So it's not really just so much like come to the University of Michigan, be great again in a season or two, guaranteed. It's more like, this is going to be a difficult a difficult undertaking for anybody who chooses to make that move. So guys like, I know a lot of people are saying like Jay Wright or the
Yeah.
guy at San Diego State, but I think that I think that there's a lot that needs to be had in terms of discussion about whether or not guys like that would consider Michigan with all of those factors working against them if they were to take that position. And, John Beeline is a very exciting name for me, myself. I would love to see John Beeline take the job again. And also noteworthy was John U. Bacon coming out on Twitter and posting something that said to the effect of, it has come to my attention that John Beeline might consider the Michigan men's basketball head coaching position if asked, but I don't know if he'll be asked. We're still in nobody knows anything territory. Just about anything could happen at this point. So,
How
you
would you not ask John Beeline? You know what I mean? Like, that should be the first call they make, is just like, hey, the job's yours if you want it. 3-year contract. He handed over such a good basketball program to Juwan Howard. He could not have handed over a better situation. Usually when Hall of Fame coaches leave, like Lloyd Carr in football, they're kind of handing over, like they kind of know the next year is going to be tough, and they hand over a bad program. John Beeline never should have left for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I don't blame him for doing it. It was something that he wanted to try. He had I think it was a 30-win season the year prior, and he handed off Isaiah Livers and those guys. So my whole thing with Beeline is they got to offer him the job. But anyway, let's keep some names going. We got about 10 more minutes here. What's another name that's on your list?
Well, I'm just going to get this one out of the way. I think this one's a little bit more of an obvious pick, but I'm going Will Wade at McNeese State, right?
Yep.
Michigan fans are familiar with them after they beat us early in the season, and they're just on a tear this year, right? And I think that he is of the demographic of guys that you want to pick from, when it comes to hiring for this kind of position, right? He checks all of the boxes. Young up and coming coach, 30-3 with the Cowboys when they won the Southland Conference on their way to an NCAA tournament berth. So I think that this guy is really impressive. If you can lure him away from McNeese State, where he's got kind of a comfy build going for him over there, to make that move over to Michigan, I think that that's definitely a conversation that Ward Manuel and company should be having.
Yeah, the fact that you even have to wonder if we can lure somebody away from McNeese State shows you how bad the situation is for basketball in Ann Arbor. But I have faith that that'll change. I think we're still gaining our footing in the NIL era. The thing I like about Will Wade, who was also on my list, by the way, the thing I like about him is McNeese State is currently number 4 in the nation in scoring defense. Man, that is music to my ears right there. After watching these Juwan Howard teams, there's a few stats that I looked at when I was looking at coaches that I would want. Scoring defense was one of them. Assist to turnover ratio and rebounding margin. After watching these Juwan teams really just play undisciplined and give up a lot of points, not rebound the basketball, not pass it very well, and turn the ball over, those were the things I really wanted to look at. So Will Wade definitely checks that box. This year will be his 6th tourney appearance. He was with LSU prior, and then I want to say VCU before that. And so the guy knows ball. He knows how to coach defense. And yeah, you mentioned 30-3 record this season. I don't care what level or conference you're playing at. You win 30 games and you get my attention.
And not to mention, they were like 11-23 last year or something like that. I mean, they were down bad, and this guy righted the ship and did it in impressive status. So really, really drawn to that pick.
All right, who else you got?
I'm sticking in the Sunshine State here. I'm going with Amir Abdur Rahim from USF, the USF Bulls. This guy has been really impressive to me the last couple of years. Built Kennesaw State from a 1-28 team, just transitioning from Division II into a 26-9 team that made the tourney. USF hired him. The Bulls are 23-6 and won the AAC at 16-2. I think this guy is a very impressive candidate that might be a little bit slept on at this point. Does have a little bit of a knock against him for his time with Kansas State, but I don't really like put too much of that on him. He was just getting going in his coaching career, but I think that this is another guy that might be flying a little bit under the radar that could be a great option for Michigan to look at.
I have seen his name floating around a little bit, but I will admit I don't know anything about this guy. Zero, nothing. So I'm not gonna pretend like I do. There's only so much basketball you can watch, especially when you're a Michigan fan and it's been a down year. And
that's why I kind of stuck to a lot of these Florida guys, just because I watch a lot of college basketball here in Florida, and some of these guys are young, impressive basketball minds, and I wouldn't be surprised for Michigan to target some of these names down here.
Yeah, especially FAU. I mean, the Dusty May guy for sure. But I'll look into what's his name, Amir Abdur Rahim. Abdur Rahim. I keep wanting to say Muhammad Ali Abdur Rahman when I see that. I know,
me too.
That's where I want to go with Michigan. But okay, now let me go to who I think is probably the best choice. Like, if I take everything into consideration, this is the guy that I think is the best choice, because I think it's realistic that he would make this move. I think his style would translate very well to what we want at Michigan. I think he coaches fundamentals, and actually his national stats show that, and he's used to competing in a really good conference. So Mark Pope, who is currently the head coach at BYU, he's won 20 games with BYU, 4 out of the last 5 seasons. They're ranked nationally 7th in assist to turnover ratio, and have a really good rebounding margin. I think they're 24th in the country in rebounding margin. He hasn't had a lot of really deep runs in the tournament, nothing like that, but I believe that it's only a matter of time before this guy makes a run at the Final Four. I think he's probably the best realistic candidate. I have some other candidates that I would like more, but he's my most realistic candidate that I think would make a really good head coach. Haven't heard a lot of people talking about him either. I went out and kind of found my own guys rather than look at like who's everybody talking about. And so for me, this is a guy that would be interesting to pursue.
I like it. I like him, and I did do a little bit of reading on him prior to the show. I think that he'd be an excellent candidate. I think it'd be a little bit tough to lure him away from BYU. That's where he's at right now, correct?
Yeah, and he's a religious guy too. So
he's a Mormon, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. And so it's like that gets. That was my one thing that I'm like, I don't know enough about that, right? Like, is that just like his forever home because of his religion? Like, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, agreed. I'm going to go a little bit more off grid here. I'm going with Anthony Grant over at Dayton. This guy's been really impressive to me. Also stemming from the Florida olive tree here. He was a 10-year assistant under Billy Donovan. Um, let's see, let's see, I just made some notes here. Was a valuable commodity as a head coach with his stint at Dayton. The last 7 seasons, he went 148 with 71 losses, right? So he's got
Good
the record to
percentage.
back him up. He was also the architect of a Flyers team in Dayton in 2019 to 2020 that went 29-2 and was poised to make a deep run in that tournament prior to the whole thing getting scrapped because of
Yeah.
COVID. So that's another impressive mark against him or with him. And he also had a winning record at VCU of 76-25 and Alabama 100 where he went 117 and 85 prior to his days at Dayton. So this guy's got a really good track record, another real under the radar candidate that success has just continued to follow him in his all of his years as an assistant as well as a head coach. So I think that this is kind of the area that Michigan needs to be looking at. Maybe not so much of a mainstream home run hire like Shaka Smart or something like that. I think that there's a lot of these guys that Michigan could really stand to scoop up on if they kind of just do a little bit of digging and make the right choice.
Yeah, I actually don't think that Shaka Smart is a home run hire. I had him on my list and just decided to remove him. Shaka Smart has been blessed with a lot of really good opportunities to do amazing things and hasn't really done them, actually. I mean, so he's a good coach. I mean, he's been on the precipice of doing great things, but I really like that pick there, the Dayton coach that you just mentioned. The last guy I want to mention, well, I'm going to bring up a few more names, but the last guy that's on my list here, this is my dark horse candidate. I haven't heard anybody talk about this guy, but I think he would be a good pick. His name is Danny Sprinkle. He is the head coach at Utah State. He's a rising star in the coaching ranks and will end up being a big name. Utah State is currently 27-6 and is poised to make a tourney run. And most importantly, you got to be tough with a name like Sprinkle. You know what I mean? Like you don't grow up with a name like Sprinkle and not turn into a tough son of a bitch. So I'm all for it. Ward, go out there, interview Danny Sprinkle. I feel like there's lots of Sprinkle memes and joke opportunities that we could have for years to come. And he's a damn good coach. He is proving to be a damn good coach. And I think if we don't go after him, somebody will. That's a name we're going to be hearing about for years to come.
For my last one, Mike, I'm going to go with, for the purpose of similarity, Nico Medved over at Colorado State.
Yeah.
And this is a guy that's already been mentioned by a few of the Michigan reporting outlets as a possible candidate. I'll tell you what really draws me to him, and that's his ability to recover from the exact type of situation that he would be taking over in with Michigan. If you remember, when he got the job at Colorado State, he took over for Larry Eustachy, who left a giant hole in that program. Immediately improved that CSU team from 224th in Eustachy's last year to 180th, 99th, 76th, and then 46th in 2022. You know what I mean? Which is impressive for a program like Colorado State. So if you look at the similarities between the state of Michigan basketball right now with just this giant hole in it, with possibly even more on the way, following the off season and whatever happens there, I think that this is the guy with the type of proven success that Michigan would want to look at to dig themselves out of a hole like that. That's really the main hang up for me, Mike, is I think any of these guys could coach a great basketball team at Michigan, any of these guys that we're talking about, but can they recover from what's been done to Michigan so far? Because Michigan basketball is in a down bad state right now with like probably more bad on the way over the course of the offseason.
Yeah.
So whoever takes this job has got to be prepared to do some digging, right? I'll tell you before I move on, my one last dark horse candidate, and that would be Medved's successor, and that's Darian DeVries over at Drake, right? He took over for Medved after Medved's single season at Drake, and after a couple of okay to good years, he's really done a great job with that program. I don't know how much anyone pays attention to Drake, but they've been a force since he's taken over. A little bit more of a smaller sample size to look at when you're looking at DeVries, but again, I think another great young hire that would do really well with Michigan in the current situation that they're in right now.
Yeah, a couple really good names there. A few other names to consider as we wrap up. You mentioned San Diego State. Brian Dutcher is he's a Michigan guy.
Yep.
His time goes all the way back to the Fab Five. He had a really good run last year. He's a very popular guy. What is his name? Bennett. The guy. So is it Tony Bennett? No, not Tony. Randy Bennett. So there is a Tony Bennett. That's not the coach I'm talking about. Tony Bennett is somebody that people have brought up. Randy Bennett is the head coach of St. Mary's. He's been there like 23 years, though, so I just removed him from my list because when I see a guy that's been somewhere for 23 years, I'm like, he's probably content retiring there. But St. Mary's is an amazing basketball program, and they are statistically in the top 5 of several major categories in the country. I mean, the dude is a really good coach. Shaka Smart was a name that you brought up. Chris Beard, former Texas Tech and Texas basketball coach that ended up coaching at Ole Miss. That dude can coach defense. I would love to hire Chris Beard. There is an issue there, though. He left Texas because of a domestic violence situation, and so it's like, and all the charges were dropped, but also it just doesn't look good. So I left him off my list.
The Wisconsin head coach before you can even count to 5.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know if I want to touch that. We'll go ahead and it's like that Homer Simpson meme when he just backs into the bushes, right? I'm just like, all right, we're not gonna do that necessarily, but yeah, I think of all the names that we named here today, there's still a pretty good chance that we didn't even name the guy that gets the job. Like, that's how wide open this thing is. And so it's exciting